Hello, I'm Dan Moyane. Welcome to hashtag Connect Africa Moyane, where we seek to enrich people's minds by sharing African experiences and stories that hopefully can contribute to a transforming continent. Hello and welcome. I'm talking to a young man whom I certainly must confess did not really know until a few weeks ago when I heard about him running a virtual reality hackathon in Sandton involving 10 African countries. Not one, not two, 10, including South Africa, the likes of Mozambique, Nigeria, and Ghana. Maybe some of you young people will know him, or some of the people who are involved in this world of virtual reality and similar technology might have heard of Daliso Ngoma. Daliso, welcome. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We are in the world of COVID-19, so we social distance, we sanitize our hands as we respect the protocols. We're starting off with the masks.
Yeah.
But of course, for the benefit of our viewers, some of whom might be deaf, we have to take them off so they can be able to read our lips.
True.
I hope you don't mind.
No, fully understood.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much.
Right.
So who is Daliso Ngoma? And I was thinking, how can I start this conversation? So I'm going to start by asking you this question differently. If you were asked today to say, who are you? How do you describe yourself?
I'm pretty much the Techman, the everything man. So literally when growing up, that was the one thing I actually wanted to be, is a computer scientist.
So from when you were a boy?
Yeah. So pretty much my dad taught me computers. This was at the age of around 6 or so. So funny enough, computer science turned into mobile development. So I'd actually been doing quite a lot of mobile programming for like the iPhone.
So we can describe you as Daliso, the Techman
Yeah.
Ngoma. Are you comfortable with that?
I'm okay with that.
That's who you are.
Yeah.
At the age of 6, your father introduces you
Yeah.
to the world of computers.
Yeah.
Just take us back there.
So I still remember the days. This was, I think, with Windows 95, obviously Windows 98. He taught me the ins and outs, being able to deconstruct a computer, put it back together. There was even
The hardware stuff.
Yeah, the actual hardware. There was even the one time where I remember, I think obviously I reminisce about it now, but when you consider the voltage that the US and I think Japan uses 100 to 120 volts, and South Africa and quite a lot of European countries, it'll be 220 to 240. So I remember I flipped the switch and it was an overvolt, and that damaged the computer. So those are the things where it was always experimentation, playing around with them. My dad actually shares the story where he saw me installing software, and that actually helped him in being able to implement that in the mines. So I've always just had a sense of curiosity when it comes to technology. Okay,
you've mentioned a couple of points which I want to expand on in answering this question. Your dad, who is your dad?
Yeah.
Why is this dad making sure that his 6-year-old son is playing with computers?
So my dad, he's retired. He's actually now, or semi-retired. He's Josh Ngoma. So he used to be a mining engineer. So he actually had quite a lot of experience in a variety of fields. So when growing up, we used to actually move quite a bit within South Africa just because of his profession. And him getting me into computers, I think it was probably an interest that he saw would actually help me. And then slowly but surely, it was just something that I just fell in love with. So again, when it comes to any sort of tech issues, I'm pretty much the person who attends to it. So he taught me. And
so one would then confidently say, being a son of a mining engineer, exposed you very early on, quite appropriately, to this world of computers. So as young as you were, even when you were starting schooling then, and that would have been in Lusaka, I would assume, when you started schooling?
No. So funny enough, we moved here in 1994. As in, I was born in 1992, so it was only just like...
You were a toddler.
Pretty much.
So you started as a 6-year-old, you were playing with computers in South Africa, right from the school. So when you walk into grade 1 class, you were like a super kid, man.
Not really. As in, at the end of the day, I remember when growing up, it was only, I presume, like probably in primary school when I got my very first phone. And even then, when it came to computers, more often than not, it was that you actually had to write out quite a lot of things. It was only, I think, in high school when it actually attended to the fact of typing in the lights.
But that is an interesting story you're saying there. You must have been frustrated at primary school when at home
Yeah,
you are exposed to the world of computers,
yeah,
even mistakenly burning some of them by switching the voltage.
yeah.
At school you are using your hand. It must have been frustrating
Yeah.
to balance those two worlds, was it?
Yeah, it was quite interesting because obviously the moving around with schools also got me into a situation where it was only when I got into university that I actually learned how to touch type. So quite a lot of my friends knew how to type properly on a keyboard. I was always like picking.
Well, welcome to my class. I still do it today. That's how I
Yeah.
type. You know?
Yeah. So it was the duality, as in I think when you're kids, you just enjoy the company of other children, one from another. It was only later on, when getting into more computer classes, that you realize that, hey, things are quite interesting. You actually want to see what is actually across the pond. And that's why early on in high school, I was actually learning how to
How
program.
old were you when you got your first mobile phone?
Mobile, probably around like 14. I still remember it. It was the Siemens ME45. It was a black and white phone with GPRS.
It was a big occasion. I still remember the brand. But
Yeah.
but the time from 6 to 14.
Yeah.
What is the growth there as you play
Yeah.
with these computers? As your dad, quite correctly, Mr. Ngoma, has
Yeah.
exposed you to this thing.
So yeah, it was just, I think, curiosity. He also built a spirit of actually being able to be entrepreneurial. So that happened quite later on. So at a later stage, what happened is that instead of him actually even purchasing computer parts for me in one form or another, I ended up actually being able to sell parts and actually get that money and actually build computers on my
At
own.
what age was this happening?
That was probably, yeah, I would say it was probably around 13 to around 17 or so. As in, I
Okay.
necessarily even did that, I think, around 18, but then I had to focus on my studies, of course. So again, it was the case of, hey, just the trade, and funny enough, it carries on to what I'm actually even doing right now.
And then the seed of, obviously, is planted very early on of the world
Yeah.
of computer science, of computers. When do you become convinced within yourself
Yeah.
that you must study to become a computer science engineer?
So that was pretty much, I'd say, when I had graduated from matric. So this was when I was 18. And it was a case of, when looking at my marks, they weren't that great. Initially, I only qualified for a diploma. And funny enough, I was thinking I wanted to actually go directly with my bachelor's. And that's why when I was looking around for universities, funny enough, for whatever reason, I ended up opting to go and study in Asia. To actually
Wow,
go
really?
and study my software engineering degree.
Okay, we'll talk
Yeah.
about that. But before we get your father is a mining engineer. In the world of mines, you don't stay in one place.
Yeah,
You move around.
yeah.
So you grew up like that as well, I assume, going from place to place.
Yeah, pretty much. So that was somewhat a scattered experience because you never necessarily got to go through like primary school, high school, university with the same people, or see the same sort of people as well. So it's always interesting when you go to certain places that you've actually lived to somewhat still remember the places that you stayed, but also the change that has actually happened as well. And yeah, I think...
And you never have an opportunity to build friendships and buddies. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, these sleepovers where you go and sleep over at a friend's place, Shem.
Yeah, so I think even with my parents, I'm not too sure if it was the case for quite a lot of my friends, but my parents were really not insistent on having sleepovers quite early when I was quite young. It was only later on that they actually allowed
Well,
it.
yeah, but
Yeah.
as an example, I
Yeah.
was just saying that, you know, you never get to form long-lasting friendships
True.
because you're always on the move.
Yeah.
What about that experience for you think gave you the views you have of the world today?
I think the one thing that is constant is change. I think that's a
Yes.
given. So just due to the fact that you always have to move around, I think you also get it when you're moving, that you always have to now move and then consider what exactly is valuable and what exactly is not. And there's always just quite an experience to even reflect as to when you're about to move, what exactly you keep and what exactly you let go of.
And I guess if you say the change is a constant, it
Yeah.
means you have to learn how to adapt quickly to the new.
Yeah. So again, it was a variety of schools, different ways that they actually went about things. And yeah.
Where did you do your matric? Which town?
It was actually here in Sandton, or actually specifically in the Heron Bridge area.
So in Johannesburg, by the
yeah.
time you were doing matric.
Yeah, so my parents committed to actually getting us to finish our high school in one particular area. So at least here we stayed for 5 years.
When you say we, you and your siblings?
Yeah, so it was myself, my sister, obviously my parents as well. Yeah.
Okay, so now you are in matric. You've
Yeah.
grown up exposed from the age of 6 to computers.
Yeah.
You've made stuff, and you were selling some things, and
Yeah.
and you're introduced to this world very early on. And you come to matric, and you are convinced you must do computer science
Yeah.
going forward, and you choose Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
Why?
I think probably because of a holiday trip. That was partially the clicking point as well. And then also the affordability as well. Considering that when looking at the costs, it was quite cheap. And then I think the other influencing factor was when there were always the student protests and stuff like that. I think it might be a bit different because of the COVID, but that was the one thing where I was like, I want to get my degree and I want to be done as soon as possible. And that partly influenced my decision.
Where in Southeast Asia?
Specifically Malaysia, so Kuala Lumpur.
So you were there physically on the ground
Yeah.
at the university there.
Yeah.
For how long?
So that was for 4 years. So I did a bridging course for 1 year and then 3 years for my Bachelor of Science with honors in software engineering.
Did you
Yeah.
ace it?
Yeah, so pretty much I got it.
I mean, you must have aced it. I mean, you were doing computers from the age of 6 at home.
Yeah.
You knew the ins and the outs.
Yeah. So yeah,
So you did very well.
Yeah, I did well. As in it was, I think it's second upper. So second upper above a second upper would be a first class.
Wow.
So again, I think I was involved in a whole lot of activities. I wish I was like the top student, but I always found myself in a variety of activities, drama club, even the likes of just like running and the likes of even just the debate society.
Drama club.
Yeah.
So you were acting.
Yeah, so it was just for the fun of it. As in one of my friends, he's actually back in India and he wanted to pursue a film career. He was actually the head of the organization. And even one of my friends, funny enough, he's actually located here in Pretoria.
Your
So,
voice will lend itself to a good actor's voice. And so, but that was at university.
Yeah, that was in university.
So you played a role there.
Yeah.
And you've got a makeup of a leader as well.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why I say that, because you founded a company. We'll talk about that soon. Yeah. But when you were in Southeast Asia, in Malaysia, the university, you were also a leader of the student council there.
Yeah, so I was actually, funny enough, the position I wanted was treasurer. So then...
You wanted the money?
Yeah, I was more interested in actually managing the money, not really being in the fore. But I was necessarily put up as the vice president.
How was that experience? I mean, the reason I'm asking, you are in Asia.
Yeah.
You're at an international university. I'm sure there's people from all over the world, including from Africa.
True.
And you get selected to be one of the leaders. How was that experience?
It was interesting. As in, I was a bit shocked because I'd only been there for around 6+ months when I actually got selected for that position. So yeah, I think the one thing it also helped was boost my confidence in a sense. As in, I've always been the person who's liked tech in one form or another. And that's why I think it was one decision that I took when going abroad, to say I would expose myself to more experiences. Rather than, I suppose, as much as I was always with the computers, with my friends and at LAN parties and the likes. But yeah.
What years is this we're talking about?
This is 2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you compare, in South Africa, you mentioned earlier, we had student protests in this country. Right up to fees must fall is one of the biggest recent ones, but even historically.
Yeah.
And there were issues are really tough issues in this country.
True.
Issues of affordability, accessibility, even the decolonization of the curriculum.
True.
In Malaysia, what are the issues for students? They just give us a picture.
I think there weren't so many issues. It's always just the scenario of assignments and exams where guys really want to get assistance. I think it was more towards the political climate at the time, where they did have a president, Najib. There was a whole corruption, It was even the whole link of the one person who even funded the Wolf of Wall Street. That was a whole situation altogether. So I think the politics was probably more of an issue. Student life, not so much. I really would not say that it was.
And the students were not getting involved in the national politics at all?
From what I could see, not
at the time.
At the time. As in, I presume there should have been a few. As in, I think even with the debate society, I had quite a few friends who actually were involved in politics itself. But apart from that, not so much. Even where I was located, not really in the center of where the protests
And
were
your
happening.
fellow African students were
Yeah.
there with you?
Yeah.
Did they have particular issues being an African community outside the continent?
I think it's a small issue. I think more towards like the racism that you got more with the police officers. The people themselves, I generally had no real issues with, but it was primarily that every single time that we were traveling around, you always had to carry your passport. So you always felt
So
like,
as
yeah.
an African, you'll be stopped by the police, and
Yeah.
and you felt that was more of a racist thing
Yeah.
than a law enforcement exercise.
Yeah, as an at the end of the day, it's a case of as much as race should not necessarily be brought up that often. But it was one of the things that I was like, it was a bit crazy when you look at people from either Europe and even like, for example, India or even other Asian countries, not so much of an issue. But when it came to Africans, that was the one issue that I saw with the police. And I think, of course, maybe there might have been a few bad apples, but yeah, it ended up just smearing us all.
Yeah, and did it affect your life on campus?
Not so much. On campus, not really. It was only when out and about. And that's the only issue that I had, where every single time, especially at night, right, you always had to wonder if, for example, you would get stopped or not. As in, I remember there was one time where I was going to church and I forgot my passport, and then all of a sudden I'm being asked, where's your passport? I have to call my housemate to say, I am stuck here. Luckily, I actually still had my phone. Was you can just imagine if it was flat, and yeah.
It is not a good feeling to be discriminated against. I
Yeah.
mean, when I was growing up in Soweto, born and bred, we used to protest against the bus book,
Yeah.
the reference book, and we had to carry it. And if you were stopped by a cop
Yeah.
or by a white person who's not even a cop
Yeah.
in this town, they would ask you for that. You had to have it all the time because you're black. So
True.
you feel discriminated against.
Yeah.
Was there a sense among the students there, from what you know, that you need to organize yourselves
Yeah.
to raise this issue with the authorities, to say you feel picked on or discriminated against?
Yeah, so there was a whole transition, as in there used to be like a student card. Whilst I was there, it seemed like they phased it out. And before I left, that's when they brought back the card. So the whole reality,
The student card became the thing, not the passport.
Yeah, so there was actually a specific card that came from the immigration. So the thing is that you had your student card, but they would not even consider that to be of any
Valid.
yeah, exactly.
They still wanted you to double verify yourself.
True, pretty much.
Yeah, well, let's hope that has changed. I've never been to Malaysia.
Yeah.
So you were there for 4 years?
Yeah, so 6 years. 6
Six-
years in total.
6 years
Yeah.
in total.
Yeah.
What happens in those 6 years after your degree?
Oh, so I actually started working. So
You started working there?
yeah.
Wow.
So that was an interesting experience because I never got taught how to do iOS programming. So for anybody who's curious, iOS programming would be your iPhones and your iPads. That was all self-taught. Funny enough, I got that from a whole lot of courses, be it that it was Udemy, YouTube, and the one that actually helped me was a course from Stanford. I still remember it, the C193P course. And that taught the fundamentals of iOS. And after that, even though I had my software engineering degree, that was the one thing that I actually just chased out to actually look for a job within that scope.
You finish studying in Malaysia with all those discrimination problems you've experienced, and you decide to work there for
Yeah.
2 years, and you believe because you'll be getting a better exposure to this iOS world.
Yeah.
Is that why?
So it was partly that, and then also the rest of Asia. Because being in Southeast Asia, it was quite cheap to travel around Asia. Compared to actually now traveling back to South Africa and flight tickets to just go there, it was just going to be crazy. So I was like,
So you use
yeah,
those 2 years to work, gain experience, and
Yeah.
travel around for
Yeah.
different experiences and exposure.
pretty much.
And how was that?
Yeah, that was quite interesting. As in, like, for example, going to Singapore, various bus trips, even flights. There was even the trip to, like, Myanmar. And there were 2 times I actually did try to go to Japan, and I think I called it quits when there were visa issues. And that was partly the reason why I actually came back. Even when I came back, I decided to actually fly back there again for an iOS conference in India. So yeah, that was primarily the reason why I was actually even.
And did you benefit during those 2 years in terms of the iOS exposure you were talking about?
Yeah, I did. It's a mixture of experiences where, for instance, because I was also quite new in the job and was actually a startup as well, I was able to take my experience and actually embed it into the organization. So they were still using Objective-C. And now I'm getting a bit more technical, which is the old language. And I had learned Swift, which was the newest language that Apple had actually released. So at least in a startup, you've got the ability to be a bit more nimble with the way that you can actually implement your own sort of characteristics as well. So even like networking systems, I think the last pack that I did there was actually install and upgrade their networking systems before actually leaving. But yeah, it was the reality of community events, hackathons, and yeah, just generally meeting cool people.
Yeah. Is it true that they don't sleep in Asia? They work 24/7, 24 hours a day?
I think it's more towards China. There's actually this application, it's drop-in audio, so you can actually just drop into a conversation. They were talking about China, how they've got a 6 to 6, 9 to 9 ethos. So 6 days of the week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Whilst in Malaysia, as in most shops would actually be running from 10 to 10. So like with an office job, yeah, I think I was working from 9, usually it'll be like 7 or 8 depending on the situation. But yeah, as in they do work hard, but I would presume more towards the Far East.
Yeah, they have a very different work ethic there,
Exactly.
and you've experienced it.
Yeah.
And then